Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive Pop with Danny Limelight, United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Pop.
Rules?
There are no rules.
What rules?
This is a revolution, damn it!
You'll hear things you've never heard before.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
They want NWA? Let's give them NWA.
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's time for the Other Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts, Tim, Dave, and Jeremy.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and what can we tell you? We are the Other Alliance Guys, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information around the National Wrestling Alliance, United Wrestling Network, Major League Wrestling, and other independents around the world. My name is Tim. I am joined, as always, by our fantasy booker extraordinaire, Mr. Dave Scooby. How are you, buddy?
Doing good.
I am tired this week, man. I am tired. It's been a long week. I'm glad I'm here, though. It's good to be here. We are currently missing Jeremy, who's running behind. You know, Dave, you and I agreed to change the start time of the show. Here he is. Still not on time.
Oh well.
Yeah, who cares?
Never.
What's that?
Better late than never.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we missed you, Jer. If you're out there and watching, we'll wait for you, buddy. Lots of people in the chat already. Appreciate you guys being here. We see that guy Shrek, who I haven't seen here before. I saw him last night on Jake House Feet.
Yeah.
So welcome. Thanks for showing up. And we got Willie here. Willie's got chicken nuggets and French fries on the agenda this evening. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And Media Mike is here. Where is that thing that Mike put up? Mike says he's got something to say about Al Snow. He likes Al, but he's got something to say. But we're kind of focusing a little bit on Al, hence the evolution of Snow, Al Snow, that is. Do you know, Dave, that the Inuit they say 100 different ways to say snow?
Wow.
But if you add Al's, it's like 109, because Al has been Avatar. He's been Leaf Cassidy.
Yeah.
He's been, I'm reading the list. I'm cheating here because I only knew those two. He's been Steve Moore. He's been Small Show. He's been Masked Ninja, Diamond Dave. That's a Van Halen reference right there.
Yeah.
5-Star Ninja, and of course Al Snow himself. And he's sort of the focus.
Or his government name, Mr. Sarvin.
Yes, Mr. Alan Ray Sarvin. I like Al. I've always liked Al. Wrestling tribalism. Well, I think we follow the General Alliance philosophy that any wrestling is good wrestling, and we don't yuck on in somebody else's yums anyway.
Yeah.
But and like Jeremy introduced me to the UWN, and Dave introduced me to MLW, and it's all different and it's all good to some degree. So like what you like.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Dave? We if Jeremy gets around here, we know we're going to be talking about what's going on with the UWN around Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and another one from the Vaults. I think it was the Red Carpet Rumble from 2014. Mm-hmm. And you're going to talk a little later about how, unless they bring in somebody like, unless Cardona steps up and does something death matchy, or you pull in a Nick Gage or something like that, and how violent is Samhain really going to be?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be an interesting discussion. I am wearing the most violent match of all time t-shirt right now. So just for this discussion. I don't know, let's start with with Power. Like, the Power has been good for the last few episodes, but they haven't really built towards this pay-per-view again.
They're slowly building. And granted, they tape and they have to make adjustments if they can. But I mean, I'd be using social media as much as I could to build up any and all matches that are already spoken for, but they're not really. They're not hardcore or violent in my eyes yet.
Right.
Who knows what they can do, but I mean, none of them really have any stipulations besides the Knights of the Round Table match. And I'm like, what the hell did Aaron come up with?
Yeah, it was strange. It was different. I guess, we can talk about that right now, but we only really have 4 matches so far booked for NWA Presents Samhain on October 28th, and here we are 24 days from it already. I know you're rolling over there to go and watch it firsthand. And main eventing that should be a good match with EC3 versus Tom Latimer, who of course has given up the television title for his shot at EC3's 10 pounds gold. I kind of hope that this just sort of builds to something, like they do one and then we get a over a year, like 2 or 3 more matches out of this. But it's too early to have Tom in there. And we got this was obviously the first one that they had was they announced was new women's world champion Kenzie Page defending against Ruthie J, who won her shot at the championship. Really the first, the first pay-per-view defense for everybody who's won a title, and there were 8 title changes at the last pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
So just not a lot of build. I haven't heard anything on it about Powers since, nothing, since then. And Colby Carino, of course, defending against Joe Alonzo, who I'll ask you about this one, Dave. He's been killing it, we've been saying for a few weeks now on social media. And then he did this one this week where he was in a church and he was, I don't know if you saw it, but he was talking about Colby. He was pretending to be Colby, talking to God about, please help me because my wife won't stop eating. And Colby put something out there. It just kind of sounded like he wasn't super impressed. Like, you got to do this shit because you're not good enough in the ring. And I thought, maybe too far, Joe. Maybe too far. What did you think?
Well, it's one of these things that promos, you try to get a little truth behind it, but they also say there's 3 things you don't mess with: politics, religion, and her. So if you start talking about one or all 3, it's sort of, you don't want to blur the lines too much, but I mean, if it was okayed, that's fine. But I mean, it seems they're trying to blur the lines a little too much.
Right.
Just give me a good match.
I mean, if you can get out of it, Colby getting ultra serious and going, you know what? Great. We'll see you on October 28th when I put my boot in your mouth. Then, okay, I guess I'm with you on that. I didn't really find it especially funny. I guess the material didn't hit for me, but they can't all be home runs, right?
Yeah.
That guy Shrek says, from what I've seen, Cardona had been doing deathmatch stuff in DDT with Maki
Yeah.
The king of the death match, of course, self-proclaimed. Mike says, as far as Al, yes, I like Al a lot. However, when it comes to marketing, his site, other platforms, bringing attention, he lacks in that huge area. I'll elaborate more soon. Yeah, and that's really been part of Wrestlers, the Netflix show about how, Matt Jones, I think his name is taken over marketing, right? That's kind of his specialty. Mike also says the NWA branded this a hardcore pay-per-view. I do not see NWA making this hardcore like TNA, not old JCP or even ECW. I see glorified street fights with a couple of spots of blood where it's needed. I think, like we've been talking about this, but like amongst all of us and the Alliance, and I think we're kind of generally in agreement that if like David sort of led the charge for us, if we just see a bunch of matches where a bunch of guys like Trevor Murdoch just beat people like up, and there's some blood, there's some fighting outside, and whatever it might be, like it's smash mouth, I think was the word you used, Dave.
Yep. It
would be better than some of the, like, what I fear is the hardcore stuff of modern times. I don't care about for me, the fluorescent light bulbs.
No.
Cage matches are great. Bull rope matches until recently were great. But I worry that it's going to degenerate either into some of the crap that we might see out of GCW, or it might go like Mike says, where it's just a bunch of street fights and there's nothing really special at all. What do you think?
I mean, have a couple special things, but I just want some good wrestling. Just tell a story. And I mean, to me, it'd be a perfect time to do a rat in a cage match. But who knows?
Yeah, that would be a good one. Shrek's clarifying. I said if Cardona's deathmatch king, Maki Ito's a deathmatch queen. Okay, I don't know that the last time I've watched deathmatch wrestling, and I think it was probably the time that guy went off the Slick Nick Mondo went off the top of took someone off the top of a Ryder truck through a table full of fluorescent bulbs, and I think I kind of went, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
The marketing Mike says is on electronic platforms, not conventional. Hal Matt Jones hasn't even touched on this, most likely as one of their viewing platforms is still dull. Right, I don't see Billy making the pay-per-view like GCW or other promotions. Billy's too traditional. Again, I'm okay with that, but like to each their own. We did get a fourth match though, Dave. We got on Power this last week. We did get this one was formed, and like you were kind of saying earlier, we've got a Knights of the Round tables match. Blunt Force Trauma versus Murnochs. And I don't know if it's going to be a traditional tables match or what. You looking forward to that one?
I really don't know. I don't mind table matches, but there's a time and a place. And I mean, I'd love to see a couple more tag teams involved, not in the actual match, but just basically come out and stake their claim that they want the winner.
Right.
And I mean, even if they're surrounding the ring to keep everybody in the ring, do that. Keep the story going, because I mean, this has so much potential with the winners of the Crockett Cup going after the tag belts.
Right.
But who knows? I mean, if they don't win this time, it's what, last chance?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be, right? Like this would be
Do they jump down to the U.S. tag titles and try to build those up? Who knows?
I know, like we were saying just before the just before the show started, we should do a predictions show with the Alliance guys themselves. If you're out there, Jay, you're watching right now, let's get together and we put that in, because I smell something with that match beyond just the traditional.
Yeah.
And if I were to guess off the top of my head, obviously not usually right, but I got most of 75 right, and I went like 16 for 23 at the Crockett Cup. Very proud of myself. I smell Knox dumping Murdoch again, and maybe joining up with Aaron. I think that there's something going on in the background. It's just too okay. We've seen this. Let's do this again. Like, you know, I don't know. Even if they lose and then one gets frustrated with the other, and we get another series between those two. I don't know, but something's going on down there. Those are the only matches. I know they've teased a bunch of other ones and so on and so forth, but that's all we know right now. What about over at MLW? They got a Slaughterhouse coming up, and I'm not familiar with the middleweights over there, but you know, their middleweight title, basically their light heavyweight title.
Yeah.
They Akira is the MLW middleweight champion, and going title for title with Rocky Romero, the CMLL welterweight champion. That's a pretty good fight.
Yeah. I mean, Court Bauer worked to put all these federations together. So they're now working together so they can actually lose titles within almost any of the federations and then have their talent float back and forth.
Right.
So having Rocky Romero there is, if you've never seen him wrestle, he's just a great wrestler. And Akira does he's part of the Calling. He does the violent hardcore stuff. So I'm looking forward to this match.
Yeah, it should be pretty decent. And like you said, there was that I forget what they call the arrangement between MLW, CMLL, and New Japan, right?
New Japan, yes.
And that's significant. I mean, it sometimes gets dwarfed because it's not WWE, it's not AEW, but it's a significant announcement. And these are three guys who have three promotions who have said, let's share some talent, let's go back and forth. And I mean, it's a big deal. Gives you some idea, like if Hammerstone can end up in New Japan, and or down in Mexico, you can bring up some of those guys. It's just super exciting. It puts Mexico with Japan.
Yeah,
and I think that's really interesting.
I mean, it's truly international. It's one of these things that if you have talent from Mexico and they're doing several different matches in the United States or up in Canada, they can work for all these different companies and they can fill in the blanks and know when pay-per-views are and then go from there.
Yeah.
That they can actually make it a storyline of traveling back and forth between the federations and making these matches work.
Yeah. Anytime you can get Hammerstone or Jacob Fatu a bigger stage, a bigger audience, hey, why not, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Shrek says they call it a strategic alliance. That's a really good term for it. I like that. So it's fun to see. And then of course, along the same lines around announcements, we got Billy Corgan saying at Exodus Pro on October 7th, he'll be present to make a big announcement that we have speculated on and talked about, and but any kind of, just in the 3 days we got before that announcement drops, Dave, any guess right out of the blue what it might be? What are you hoping for, even?
I don't know. I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm hoping for a better platform. YouTube isn't bad, but I mean, we need to make some noise. The NWA needs to make some noise. If it's something with Exodus Pro, that's cool and everything, but how much more is Exodus Pro known than the NWA?
Right.
Doesn't really help us. It's just going to be a wait and see.
Yeah, it will. Or maybe we've talked about how it might be kind of sort of the start of a territory, minor league with, you've got Exodus Pro. Jay was talking about it the other day, I think, too. If you got Exodus Pro up in Cleveland, you've got Boca Raton, you've got Joe Kazana's promotion. If it's a strategic alliance of its own. So, if it's a streaming deal, if it's some kind of program, that'd be awesome. But hey, we'll see what it is. We'll see what the boss comes up with. James Bell's here. He said, no, Knox can't turn on Murdoch. He just got likable. I agreed. No one ever more for me in the NWA went from zero to hero in my mind than overnight than when Knox went babyface and teamed up with Murdoch. I didn't care about Mike Knox one little bit. Now I think he's great.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm wrong almost 50% of the time. Mike says, I'm with James on that mention. For myself, too early just to break them up. Yep. I would agree. Shrek says, I want to see Jacob Fatu either go to WWE for the Bloodline or see him part of New Japan as part of GOD, Guerrillas of Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
He's too good a talent, with all due respect to Court Bauer at MLW. He's too big a talent to just live there forever. And it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Willie says Knox and Murdoch should beat the crap out of BFT. Yeah, maybe. Those are two pretty tough guys, though, right? So, but it'll be a good big boys beating up big boys match.
Yeah.
and Willie does not care, as we all know, for WWE. Nor does Willie care for Angelina Love. Oh boy, Willie hates on Angelina Love, who just got married. So congratulations to Angelina Love and her husband Fodder. That's nice for them. Don't listen to Willie. It's nice that they found each other. Well, we've talked about Samhain, and we've talked about there wasn't much else on Power.
No,
really to build up for some of this stuff. So we can go and take a look, guys, at episode 2 of Wrestlers real quick. But before we do that, I'm going to. Hey, Retro's here. Hey, Retro, what's up, buddy? Retro's an awesome guy. We met him down at 75 and had a great time. Before we get into that, I'm going to, every week, just for a minute, shorter and shorter every time, I'm going to bang over your heads. Please sign the petition that we've started to ask Billy Corgan and the National Wrestling Alliance to restore the NWA Hall of Fame. There has not been any inductions during the 6 years of the Lightning One era. And all we're asking, if you go to this and sign up and put your name, all we're asking in a super friendly manner is for the NWA to restore the Hall of Fame and start inducting people, hopefully in time for NWA 76, so that all of the legends who are still outstanding, and you would not believe that list, can get the recognition they're due frankly, while there's still time in some cases. Or, even posthumously in others. Like Barry Windham's not in the NWA Hall of Fame, guys. That should be enough to sign the petition right then and there. I don't believe Magnum TA is. I know Tully is, but I don't believe Magnum is. So please go over there. If you don't mind, sign your name. And then if you're following me on social media, I'm at the Alliance Gold. I've been incredibly busy recently, but I am starting the campaign in a very friendly, not aggressive manner to ask Billy and the NWA to restore the Hall of Fame. Retro says he would travel to a Hall of Fame ceremony. They should do a Hall of Fame along with anniversary weekends. I can't imagine what would be more fun, Dave, than going to 76, say, and watching 3 or 4 guys get honored in the ring. I would enjoy that so very much, to be part of that. Let's talk about. I'll get that off the screen. Let's talk about wrestlers on Netflix.
all right.
We are still waiting for Jeremy. Don't know if or when he's going to arrive, but he's running late and he's got some things that have come up. But we'll be waiting on him. I'll let him jump in when he gets here. So Wrestlers, the Netflix TV show that focuses on Al Snow's Ohio Valley Wrestling. Just trying to get the right banner up here. There it is. Doesn't really matter. 7-episode series on Netflix. We all like it amongst the other Alliance guys, the 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
We did the opening episode last week, which was kind of an introduction, and this one, Dave, really kind of focused on Al Snow's history and backstory and how he kind of makes OVW. So using a recap I took from WW Talk Pod, it's the best one I found online. I just give them credit. This episode starts with Al Snow and a bunch of the wrestlers at his house, and they're watching WWE. They're giving their critiques on what they feel is missing from wrestling as a sport right now, And they feel that there's a stark difference between the real unscripted promos that we used to see in the 90s or the 80s and the heavily scripted and monitored promos and mic work that we're seeing now, especially in places like WWE. And Al agrees and feels that these younger wrestlers today also sell what they do and not why they do it. Al's trying to, as we start, trying to impress upon the younger generation that there's storytelling to be done here. There's a reason that you do these moves, rather than just try to figure out a way to do a 720 insert name of plancha here. There should be a psychology about it. What did you think of what Al was saying in the beginning of the film?
I do agree. I mean, it's one of these things of make what you do matter. Don't just do it to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a job making pizzas, just make the pizza. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just make the pizza. Just do your job. The basics are what work. Once you get those down, you can add little things here and there, add some seasoning. But you don't want to make it so big that you forgot what started this. That they say you remember the last thing that happens. Well, keep the story simple, and I mean, you won't have a difficult time remembering what happens if it's a simple storyline.
Right. They do. You're absolutely right with that comment. You do remember the last thing that happened. You do remember high spots. It's true, but there's nothing better in this sport than a feud and the reason behind it and what happens during it. The shirt I'm wearing is Tully and Magnum. It wasn't about this moment where a chair leg is being driven into Tully's head. It was about one of the best feuds in pro wrestling history, and I really enjoyed like Al's perspective. Al is sold on this show, which is definitely entertainment based. They're telling a story as the story itself is being told. The production of it is telling a story from Netflix. But they really sell Al, Dave, as like a legend in the sport. And when I was watching, I kind of went, we know him. I don't know that I ever would put him in the same category as the term legends, but he was great and it was super enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was good to know that Al is a kind of guy who clearly has either always been or developed into a mentor capable of running an organization like OVW. So, yeah. So Shrek says, I watched it for a bit, but its production stuff kind of killed it for me. Nothing towards Al. I like him. Yeah, he's very likable in this. And we end up going to a segment where it takes us down memory lane on how Al got his start in, WWE now. He makes his debut with the company in '93 with a masked gimmick that doesn't work. He eventually is paired off later on in his career with Marty Jannetty to create the new Midnight Rockers under the Leaf Cassidy gimmick, and it didn't work. You can't take something that worked with Shawn Michaels and expect Al Snow, 10 years later to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Al admits for this that he had an attitude during his first run in WWE. He was young, but he finally found the gimmick for him that worked. Once he went through Avatar and whatever the other ones were, and that gimmick was as he describes it, a schizophrenic character that he created in '98 during his stint in ECW, which was relatable and somehow and imaginable. And that led him back to WWE. And he stopped thinking about the wrestling moves and made finding a good character that registered with his fans a priority. And that just goes back to what you were saying, Dave. Like I can remember Al in ECW, right? And like everybody remembers the theme music from WWE. What does everybody want? But, yeah, but in ECW, when he'd get in there with that mannequin head, and you like, I know that the 2300 arena is not that big, but the place was filled with mannequin heads. He was so over. Yeah. Were you an ECW guy at that time? Did you go to those shows?
I didn't. I only saw one ECW show when they ended up in Wichita, Kansas, back in like, I think 99, maybe 98, 99. And I'll tell you, I was seriously inebriated and under the influence. I liked the wrestling, but I couldn't tell you who even wrestled.
Right.
Just there partying with friends, and I'd love to actually see what had happened, and if I kept the ticket or that kind of stuff. But
right.
It's one of these things. We were just so excited to be able to see them live that it's one of these things that if you got them on TV, it was at like 2 or 3 in the morning on the New York Yankees network or whatever overnight. So to see them live, it was a chance just to see something different, because we had seen WWF at the time and WCW. So it's just one of these things that it was something different. It was the flavor of the month.
Yeah.
And it lasted more than a month. So it one of the things I do remember about it is there were some people complaining because it wasn't all hardcore. And if you look back, ECW, it was extreme, but not everything was hardcore. They had some very technical wrestlers, but they mixed it up just enough that you always wanted more. But you'd always get a hardcore match or something dealing with the women, and a bra and panties match, something with Sandman and his cane, Singapore cane. So they used what they could to build stories, and not all the wrestlers were good. That's why a lot of them did the hardcore, because it hid their vulnerability.
Yeah, no one was better at that than Paul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, this is I get the sense from talking to Mike. Mike, you and I got to do an hour online at one point, just record it and let it go up. This is in his backyard, and Mike says, "Let me tell you, the time I used to throw heads out into the crowd before Al's matches a few times, people would fight for the styrofoam heads. ECW would take a 5-minute break to give out heads to the crowd. People from the back would toss them. People went insane for them. We were able in New York to watch ECW on the MSG network at 12 midnight, Sunshine Network, and later on MSG would have ECW at 2 a.m. Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember the 2 a.m. ECWs. I remember the Nashville network at one point having them for a year or so as well. Chuck is saying, I wish I was around when that was around. It was, to Dave's point, it wasn't like, not everything was hardcore, because early on in that promotion, you'd have Chris Candido just doing Chris Candido stuff, with his top rope power bomb style maneuver. That look, like he had guys like Mike Awesome doing that.
Yep.
And Mike didn't always have to do it off the top rope to the outside through a table on what's his name, awesome Japanese wrestler. Anyway, it'll come to me, or it'll come to one of you guys, and he could just do it in the ring, Mike Awesome was so over with me. Chris Candido so incredibly over. Candido was an all-around 5-star athlete, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But guys like Taz and Al, for that matter, and Mike Awesome and like the hardcore guys you were mentioning, like Balls Mahoney and could be stylized in the match to suit their strengths.
Mhm.
It was very cool stuff. Technical but hard hitting wrestling. Steve G is here. Hello, back to you, Steve. So ECW was in the late 90s. Yeah, I'm pretty old, buddy. Oh my God, sneaking in through the side door. It's championship wrestling from Jeremy. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well.
Good. We're glad you joined us. I'm gonna start turning my camera off around here recently. I feel so exposed. But we're just in the middle of, or just to the start of some of this. Just talk about Al and where Al's been and what Al's done, and got on to ECW for a few minutes there. As we go into this particular show, so I mean, after we get the retrospective on Al's career, and you get kind of swept up in the moment of the show, the emotion that it brings. Like, yeah, I do miss some of that that old ECW stuff, that old Al Snow stuff. Masato Tanaka, there you go. God, were you an ECW guy, Jeremy?
I wasn't necessarily an ECW guy. I definitely wasn't against it.
Yeah.
But I found myself a lot of times just asking why.
Right.
So that kind of it. When I ask why too much, I probably am looking too hard and need to move on. But
Yeah.
I appreciated what they were doing. I to sit here and say that I didn't enjoy it. I was 20, 21 at its peak. So I was definitely the key demographic at that point. With Al Snow, I was completely all in on that. I even put in the Discord that I remember popping for him wrestling the mannequin head.
Right.
Because he like he tells us, he sat down and he read a book about abnormal psychology.
Right.
He completely invested in that, and it felt real. Looking at it now, if this was just haphazardly thrown together like we see some stuff nowadays, it'd be the shits.
Yes, it would. And like part of it is just we're saturated by this stuff.
Yeah.
There's Mike was saying in the chat like we should do something because I was an ECW fan. I was a casual ECW fan. Unlike Jeremy, wasn't against it, didn't follow it. I wasn't awake at 2 a.m. But like on the times when I was, then yeah, that's when I'd see it. But
that was another thing, accessibility. Whenever I lived in Evansville, it wasn't available.
Right.
They didn't run it in Evansville. Whenever I lived in Cincinnati, it was on in prime time.
Right. And again, as what Dave was saying, like I was unknowingly, I guess at the time, I don't know how smart I was to the inner workings of ECW, but I don't remember. But unknowingly, I was a Paul Heyman fan because I loved Mike Awesome. I wanted more of Mike Awesome. No one was more disappointed than when he came to WCW and became the Fat Chick Thriller or that 70s guy. But it's Mike Awesome. He doesn't need a gimmick. He's Mike Awesome. Because in ECW, for all of his faults, he looked like he was trying to legitimately kill Masato Tanaka.
Oh, I'm sure he probably, at least a small part of him probably was.
Yeah.
That man was a brutal man.
Yeah, actually.
He was a hard man.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone now, and I don't know all the details, but there were some allegations against him outside the ring.
Yeah.
And hopefully that wasn't the case. But I loved the characters and stuff that Paul Heyman was able to direct the guys to create, the talent to create. So if you're a fan of that stuff, I should do this more often. There's a book. It's not specifically ECW, but it's actually all hand drawn art. It's called The Way of the Blade.
Oh,
And
wow.
it is stories by a good researcher talking to people who were involved or watched or remembered or were there. Some of the greatest bloody matches of all time. It's kind of a cool read. It's everything from Japan to Mexico to the U.S. and Canada. So I do recommend it. Anyway, let's go back to the chat here just for a sec. Let's see. I liked CM Punk work in WWE version of ECW. I didn't bother with the WWE by that point. I would tune in for Punk for when I'd hear about things like the pipe bomb and but I had already moved on. Let's see what we got out here. Steve didn't get ECW out his way. That was part of the problem, was an inability to get much of a national expansion. Yeah. Willie's not a fan. Sorry. Of Mr. Punk. I heard Mike Awesome is related to Hulk Hogan. That is true. And I'm sure if it was a nephew or a cousin, but I think it was a cousin. Probably a quick Google search would check that one up. But I think he was a young cousin of the Hulkster. Maybe by marriage, I don't know. I bet the mass transit incident is in that book. It might be. I turned my back on very few wrestlers in the world. It's a very small list of guys I have no time for whatsoever, and New Jack's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And everyone can have their opinion and love him to death, but that kind of stuff and the Gypsy Joe stuff and all kinds of other stuff, trying to throw what's his name to his death, off the top of a tower, trying to kill him. That'll come to me too. Anyway, I got no time for New Jack. He should never have been allowed to be in a ring with, actual professionals. Let's get back to this. Hollywood Haley J, who is like already becoming the focal point other than Al for this 7-episode series. She's back in training mode. She's getting some tips from Eric Darkstorm, who's her real life boyfriend. There's issues because of competition between the two. I mean, like personal issues. He says he's worried that the early success of Haley that she's getting, that maybe it'll go to her head. And Dave, when I was watching him, I couldn't help but think he's goddamn jealous.
Yeah.
Like when you were watching it, did you think he was just like, oh, I'm legitimately worried about her future and developing correctly? Or did you think he was just crossing his arms and kind of going, why isn't it me?
No, I think it's a jealousy issue. And if you've watched more than up to the second one, you see he really doesn't have a backing of women wrestling. So it's one of these things of he's wanting to have his cake and eat it too. But
right.
He's getting either a response. She's taking the spotlight away from him in his eyes.
Right.
One of those things. I mean, if she's got it, she has it. And I mean, I believe if she cleans up her act, she can move on and do some great things in wrestling.
Oh, he's got probably 10 or 12 years on her in terms of age. I think even more. And we've talked about, like last time around, about how the maturity level that Haley shows, while she's really intriguing and interesting, it's so low and needs so much work. And he's got all this experience and age on her, and he isn't a lick better.
Nope.
Shrek says, from what I learned, seeing jealousy runs deep in wrestling like blood in a body. Yeah, it's not going to work for me, brother. How long? How many times have we heard that line? Hogan said, "Oh, it's not going to work for me, brother." Come on. It's Mike says it's part jealousy on Darkstorm's end. Eric is known to be a nurturer to people, including women. Probably is his lifestyle. Mike puts nurturer in quotes. So we'll let that out there. But we see Al Snow and his team, which I enjoyed this segment, working on stories for the weekly shows, and that will lead up to this pay-per-view. And one match in particular for an upcoming pay-per-view is a hair versus hair match with Haley J and Maria, Amazing Maria. Is that what it is? God,
yeah,
terrible. Yeah. Who is her real life mother? And this is not hidden in the storyline either. And she's like, what do you think, hair versus hair? And she's like, I'm down for it, whatever you need. And I really enjoyed Jeremy looking behind the scenes and saying, like, she's so into this, and she's in her 40s, and she's looking for her last few rays of sunshine before it sinks down over her career. And she's like a real backstage force and presence in the locker room.
Yeah. You can tell that she's been grinding in this and putting in the work. Now she's still active in the ring, but she's getting to partake in the backstage part of it, the production part, the area that you want to learn before you're on your way out the door, so that way you don't have to actually leave.
Right.
You can still hang around, but now you're not out there in the ring anymore. You're working behind the scenes.
Right.
And the business of wrestling, that's probably the best thing that could happen for any wrestler that's seen their glory days come and go.
In any sport, yeah.
Exactly, in any sport, to be able to help out and lead the future of something that you dedicated your life to, it's not the same adulation that you get from getting that 3 count and holding that title, but it's still gratifying.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's lots of people who use the phrase "those who can't teach incorrectly." Like, this is a perfect example. When the in the next few years, when she can't, she'll teach.
Yeah.
And that's how she continues to contribute.
Yep.
So Al's dilemma in this episode is that he has to promote this pay-per-view to make sure that they can get 500 purchases of the pay-per-view in order to break even. This is the number he's been told by Matt Jones and whoever the mayor is, I forget his name, who was also a partner in OVW. Craig.
Yeah.
So very stressful for Al. You can see it in Al's face in the poster, in the thumbnail that Jeremy made. You can see it in his face with that picture. Al's just that goal really weighs him down. And we get a bit of a historic recap on why pay-per-views and wrestling go hand in hand, why they're so important to a wrestling company for a revenue standpoint. Because again, this is about being successful financially. And OVW doesn't make any money from their ad revenues because their ratings aren't very good as a show. So Matt, Country Boy Matt, I think that's what it is his radio show. He's one of the co-owners, and he's pushing for more traveling shows, as we'll see, because that's the one time that they can actually make a profit, is if they travel around, Kentucky and Ohio, wherever they go. I guess we'll see that as it goes along. So the summer is set to be a traveling series of shows for almost everyone on the roster. I'll skip one or two here, but just a few days before this pay-per-view, because this isn't the pay-per-view that they're leading up to in the series. This is one that is partway down the road as they're watching this. Haley and Maria, mother and daughter, or daughter and mother, they're cutting backstage promos on each other to really get that the feeling of the feud over. Shrek sees Al advertising on Facebook. That's not a bad move. And this part, Dave, I just started laughing. They show this long segment of Al just getting hounded by the talent.
Yep.
Everybody wants to be on the pay-per-view, and they're all like, all right, Al, what if this happens? And they pitch some of the craziest ideas. And Al is very much I don't think that's going to work. But he listens to all of them. He hears them all in detail, and he has to say no to his talent a lot of times. What did you think of that segment?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that you're trying to help the talent, but the talent need to help themselves. But they just need to take the KISS approach. Keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Just easy, no difficulty in people having to figure out what's going on. Just it's good versus bad, or good versus good, or bad versus bad. Just tell a simple story, and then if people latch onto it, you move on. If they don't, you step back, and next person in line, it's their turn.
Right. Shrek has said they had to cancel a show in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I think that they had an excuse, but I heard it was a lack of ticket sales. Could be. So part of that's a slightly good segue for this, is we move very much in this episode after we see all the stress that's on Al, the number of ticket sales he has to make for pay-per-view buy rates in order to make a profit, and how now he's going to be dealing with traveling shows and all of the stuff that will be off-site and all the problems that brings. And so Matt and Craig, the co-owners with him, say that if they don't see a change in ticket sales after over the summer, then they're going to have to let some of the staff go. We get to see all of the hard work and the hours that are going on with filming is put into a specialty match for, that will take place in hell for this upcoming pay-per-view, and requires a special location. I think they spend like 7-8 hours out overnight in a bus and in a house. And, they're trying to do sort of an Undertaker style. I say Undertaker style, but I mean supernatural style of presentation, with all the props that have to be bought to make it look perfect. And it really gives you a glimpse on how hard everyone's working to make these things happen. But the one, Jeremy, that actually, like, I thought, damn, like the emotion of the show is getting to me, it was Brian. So Brian's the commentator, guys. He's the play-by-play guy. He also works for OVW as a full-time employee. He's a cameraman. He's an announcer. He's the graphic designer. And he's told by Matt that he's not doing enough to justify his salary.
Yeah.
So now we see he's putting in more hours, putting more pressure on himself. This results in the segment in him losing some really valuable quality time with his child, with his family. And he's crushed by it. He's trying to, I think he was racing to a golf course to try to like set up something, a promo thing, like, leaflets around town, the whole bit. And he can't be everywhere. And he's sacrificing his personal time because he doesn't want to get fired. And he believes in this thing, and he just doesn't, he can't do everything at once. He actually says something, Jeremy, about he doesn't care about being fired because he needs the money. He cares about it because he cares about OVW and what it represents.
Yeah. Brian is every one of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
this guy right here.
This is a guy that got, and he even tells us he was doing a podcast with his buddy.
Yeah.
And after they interviewed Al, they were like, if you ever need anything, any help with anything, and I was like, show up. And here he is, however long later, that's a tough position to get put in. How do you measure the metric of one person getting people in the door,
right,
selling tickets? That isn't one of your wrestlers at that. You can do that with one of your talents, one of your on-screen wrestling talents through merchandise sales, social media, unless you're taking a poll at the door and going, did Brian get you to buy a ticket this week? Did Brian convince you to buy a ticket this week? That was unfair, and I didn't care for that.
Yeah, and how much impact, no matter how many hours he works, can one guy make?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of thought he should have been like, everybody here's 100 leaflets each, right?
Yeah.
Go to your part of town and put them on street poles or whatever it is that you're doing. Everyone should have been pitching in here, I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Or someone should have been hired to be doing this stuff. For I don't know.
This is also hot. This is also reality, and I use air quotes on that TV. So that's not to say that they didn't have that conversation with everyone, but Brian was the one that we saw because of the issue that he had later on in the episode with having to not be able to see his son because he's instead, trying to show that he's a company guy and he's there for the business and he's willing to sacrifice it all.
Right.
Yeah.
We're back to Eric Darkstorm saying, Haley has more merchandise, she gets more attention, but I'm sure she'll sell, be great, and that's good for her. And again, I find myself thinking, okay, Eric, we heard you the first time. But they do have a segment with her talking to Layla Gray about how some of the fans are leaving comments on social media about they're only watching the pay-per-view because of her. Layla seems excited and in this to participate, and the two of them are pretty excited leading up to a particular match. And then the pay-per-view is actually, I think I probably kind of presented it wrong in the beginning. I think I said it was Maria versus Haley in a hair. It's actually Layla Gray versus Haley J in a hair versus hair. That Maria will end up getting her haircut in as part of the storyline we learned beforehand. So that's what she's part of. I'm right on that, right? It's been 5 episodes ago. So then they go to the pay-per-view and the turnout is shit.
Yeah.
It is not good. Al is very disappointed and he doesn't understand why it's so hard to sell out this building. And it kind of just rests there as a show for a little bit. And we end up going, Dave, into this final match where Haley, Jay, and Layla Gray's match. It's one of the last matches. It gets pretty gritty. Layla's the women's champion. There's no rules. There's no countouts. The early on in the match, they take it out of the ring. There's trash cans, all hell breaking loose, that type of thing. Everyone's very excited backstage. Layla gets the win, and Haley J is like, I'm not doing this. I'm out of here. And then on a planned spot, Maria comes out and she basically makes sure that the stipulation of a haircut is follows. Layla grabs the scissors, cuts a big chunk out of Haley's hair. Crowd loves it. It's a great showing and a success for the women's division in OVW. And afterwards, they're glad that they did well, that it pulled it off well. But Haley is disappointed that there weren't more people seeing it, and so is Maria. And it's very clear, Dave, for basically the end spot almost of this show, is the penultimate end spot here, but is that they have a long way to go, OVW as a company, and a lot of things that they need to focus on. You there, Dave?
Oh yeah. It's one of these things of either the crowd or the audience are going after doesn't have the money to see them on a weekly basis, or I should have checked online to see what tickets actually cost to go to either, because I believe every Thursday that they are live. So it's one of these things of either bump it down, do 2-for-1 specials, do something to try to build up a crowd. But just because you sell a ticket doesn't mean people will show up.
Yeah.
But you get the money from that ticket. So adjust your prices, do whatever needs to be done to get people interested and involved with your product.
Yeah, I really liked what Shrek says here. Dolph Ziggler said it best, but he said sometimes the things you love don't always love you back. For this or any other partner we've talked about with OVW, you can give and you can give, but sometimes it doesn't love you back, and it doesn't love Brian back at the end of this show, Jeremy. And he's now worried about whether he's going to have a job within the next 2 months or so, if this doesn't improve, and what's expected of him. And he says this is like a really special place. He reminded me, I don't mean by circumstance, but by his role. This is like our friend Gary Horn, where he had a podcast and then it just clicked and everything worked, and Gary does a lot for that company.
Yep.
And, if Brian is Gary, and, this is a guy who's a real human being who's working his butt off, and he says, it's worth it for me right now because this place is special. It's not your average bear when it comes to pro wrestling. It's not overproduced. It has depth, and it makes you think, and it's unique. And he hopes that it works out for him, but you get the sense with Brian, he really hopes that it works out for OVW even more than himself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Going back to earlier, this is a guy that loves wrestling, but really something in OVW has clicked with him. And he truly loves that company. He would go down with the ship.
Yeah.
And then to ticket prices, I pulled up ticket prices. So for Dave's favorite spot, ramp side, he'd be looking at $18.02 or $20 at the door. General admission is $17 at the door, $15.90 if you buy ahead online, and then kids 8 and under are $10.60.
That's not bad at all.
It's not a bad price, but I'm trying to remember where. If I remember right, they're not like located in the city either, though. They're kind of on the outskirt, if I remember right.
So maybe their location is part of their difficulty in selling it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, yeah, they kind of sit. Yeah, they're on the out. They're in what's called West Betchel.
Okay.
And that's on the east southeast side of Louisville, close to the county outskirts.
Right. You know, it's you and I talked in Discord about the area, and I did not articulate well what I was trying to get across, but it's such a unique place from an outsider, not being an American, looking in and looking at Kentucky. You know, because I think it touches on 5 or 6 U.S. other states.
Yeah.
Or other U.S. states, and it's such a unique place that, you know, it seems to kind of like have be this area that I thought that, like, you know, leached kind of some of the other influences around it, and then you described it. You know, there's basically two schools of thought when it comes to sports there, and it's a totally like split. You know, outside of it's Louisville, right? Outside of Louisville, it's a different area than Louisville completely.
Louisville in Kentucky, Louisville exists on map, and there are people that live there, but the rest of the state is Kentucky,
right?
And they root for UK. You don't talk about University of Louisville outside of Louisville. And it touches on 7 states.
7, okay.
Yeah. Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Tennessee.
West Virginia doesn't count. There's nothing there. Jeremy's like,
I've never been there, so I can't verify if it exists.
Name me a city in West Virginia. That's right. You can't, because there isn't.
Right. Like I said, I've never seen it, so I'm not going to verify that it even actually exists. So
it's pretty small, but I can't comment. I have been there, but I mean, that's pretty young.
But yeah, Kentucky is a weird state. That's the best way I can put it. It's just a weird state. It's got some beautiful places, some beautiful people, but it's a weird little state.
You know, even now I'm not describing what I'm getting to well, and it just occurred to me. You can promote in Florida with a lot of greens and oranges and palm trees, and you know, it's Beach Blast 2023 here in Florida, and you know, here's the Florida style of wrestling. You know, the Outrunners would fit perfectly in Florida, you know, and that's Florida, and everybody knows what wrestling in Florida is like. And we know what wrestling is like in Nashville, and we know what it's like in Portland. You know, we know what it's like in Calgary. We know what it's like in Tokyo. And Kentucky, to me, is like, what is it in Kentucky? It's such an enigma, and I wonder if part of the problem of OVW is, you know, trying to get that message out as to where their style comes from to a larger audience.
That's a good point.
I could be totally wrong.
Well, no, because it again, it is an amalgamation of styles because it touches on so many different states.
Right.
You know, so you have a little bit of that Memphis and Nashville style, that Tennessee style. You've got a little bit of that East Coast, you know, North Carolina style that bled over into the Virginia states and
Right.
the Kentucky. You know, you've got some of that Indiana and Ohio style that's bled down, you know.
Yep. And they've got a couple of people there that are super interesting.
Yeah.
Like I hate on Haley J for her immaturity, but man, she's interesting.
Fantastic character.
Yeah, great character, and there's something there.
And it's real though.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that goes to Al, you know, leading them into what is your strength is you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was a good episode, I thought, overall. Kind of leaves us wondering where it's going to end up. Of course, we know it's still running today, but how successful the show will tell us by episode 7. We got a few more episodes to go before that. Let's get on with at least a little bit of UWN with Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
The following is a presentation of the United Wrestling Network.
It's time for Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
Wow. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood anyway, right?
Yes. This week we went back in the time machine to 2014, and we got Red Carpet Rumble. We got to see Willie Mack. We got to see a very young and looked like a good stiff breeze would knock him over, Peter Avalon, who, if I remember correctly, lasted halfway through. And even then, I commented to Lamb in his Discord that he looked almost unhealthily thin.
Yeah.
But he was still impressive. We got to see a young Che Cabrera and Bad Dude Tito. We got to see Willie Mack. It was a really good match all around. I said last week, and same goes for this week, we will be getting some more flashbacks in the next couple of weeks. They have gotten, we touched on this last week, that the UWN has secured television with Spanish language channel. So get out your Duolingos, your Babbles, whatever language training tool app you may.
Rosetta Stone
is a good one. Hooked on Phonics. I don't know. Well, that one just teaches you how to read it. Oh, that may help me some, but anyways, this is what we're going to be getting for another week or two at least. But I highly recommend tuning in and checking it out, because you're getting to see the foundation of the UWN and what helped build it and get me to start talking about it on here on a weekly basis. If you're not watching, eat your socks.
I will never eat my socks because I will always be watching. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's rough because, Memphis hasn't been producing a lot of great stuff. Unfortunately.
And not that they haven't been producing anything good. It's just nothing has it's been very, very few and far between have been clicking that, like, yeah, that's the match of the week.
Yeah, it's true. It's been a bit of a rough spot. Kokishi 629. In your opinion, who from OVW, especially from the documentary, would you like to see in the NWA? Dave,
Mahabali Shira.
Oh, number one right off the bat.
Yeah,
100%.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. What's he doing down there?
Then next, I Cash Flow would be a good fit.
My wife, the Reluchador, says Hollywood Haley J. So she did have a WWE tryout.
Yeah.
And there was a problem with her medical. She's right here. There was a problem with her medical paperwork, and they said get it fixed and come back. I have no idea officially what that means.
Oh.
I shouldn't speculate really what it is, but I would love to see her go there. What about you, Dave? Who would you like to see from down there?
I don't know. Maybe Jesse Goddard's see him there to come in and shake things up. It could possibly help EC3, being that they're in OVW, they're rubbing each other the wrong way. And I don't know. I mean, we saw Dixie on OVW. What about Dixie versus Billy? They had a past in TNA. If they can work together, bring it to the NWA and relive the past.
Yeah, for sure. Like I say, from the documentary, you say I really like Cash Flow too, Jeremy. But for me, he was a guy who he's going to live and die in OVW, and that's probably where his value is.
Yeah,
for the local community. Although he seems like the kind of hand you'd want to develop into an agent or something.
Oh, definitely.
For me, it was Haley J. There's something with there's not enough focus on some of the other talent. I forget his name, like Ricky Von Rocket or something. And I forget who he used to be too. But he's good. He's a good wrestler, and he's been around. And I wouldn't mind seeing him in the NWA.
Yeah.
All right, let us move on to. There you go. MVEC Whitman. Hello, by the way. Ryan Howe from Tough Enough. That's who he was. There you go. Big Al. Haley J probably has blood in her. Oh God. So I got to get a screener on here full time, man. I was saying to the guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they said, did you smoke today? Because they took a test, and as we'll find out later in the show, her partaking on the days of her matches is a problem. But who knows what it was? Hopefully, it was something minor, and she gets another crack at the can soon. Yeah. Let us go to the final segment that we have. Where our fantasy booker, Dave Scooby, comes in a segment we call I Respect You, Booker Man. So, Dave.
Yes.
With the way things are set up right now, with kind of so far the lack of a build, unless you're bringing in a Matt Cardona to do a death match, unless you've got, I think Nick Gage was someone you threw out to me as a name coming in to fight somebody, do something violent. How violent is NWA Samhain going to be?
Well, I'm hoping it's just a hard-hitting pay-per-view, but I'm also hoping that Violent J isn't the only violent thing that takes place or happens at Samhain. Like you had mentioned, Matt Cardona does the Deathmatch King out on the Independence.
Yep.
He's not scheduled, but his event on the 28th was canceled overseas. So we could see him. Sammy Callahan from Impact is a free agent. He is a psychopath. He could show up. Homicide, we always know. 187 is violent as all get out. I hate to say the boogeyman, but he's out on the Independence. He could show up just as a
special attraction. Yeah.
Kevin Sullivan. If you know about Kevin Sullivan back in the 70s and 80s, how his satanic character went, I'd bring him in just to pop me myself.
Me too, man. He scared the shit out of me when I was younger.
Oh yeah. Well, he's been involved with the NWA down in Florida. He's a vampire. Bring him in. It's a Halloween it doesn't have to be violent. It just has to have that feel to it. You could also have, I mean, maybe a first blood match. And like I said, it doesn't have to be hardcore. Just have some violence, some hard-hitting matches. Make it mean something. We have Kenzie and Ruthie J for the Burke. If you know Kenzie, you know she'll do what needs to be done to keep her title. Same thing with Pretty Empowered. They're going against Natalia and Taylor for the women's tag titles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Natalia, she took on Max back in New Orleans.
Casket match?
The casket match. So they can make it a casket match again if need be. You have the Knights of the Round tables match. It's a little wonky, but we'll see where it goes. No gimmick so far for EC3 and Tom, but I do see Camille getting involved, but I'm just hoping that she gets involved so it furthers the storyline.
Right.
Because it's too short for a one and done. So they just need to make it a hard-hitting match, and whatever they choose to do, just make it good. Colby and Alonzo for the junior heavyweight title. It could be violent, seeing what Alonzo has been talking crap on Colby. Also, Jamie Stanley, he could get involved since he chose to go with Alonzo rather than Colby. But also, Jamie Stanley had a recent tryout with the WWE. So this could wrap up his storyline if he does get picked up by the WWE. So we'll see. You got La Rebellion along with Vampiro versus the Clowns and Violent J.
Yeah.
That's just going to be hopefully a good violent match. But I don't want it to be hokey. That they know how to wrestle each other. They've wrestled each other in the past, and use the managers in good roles. I don't want to see them wrestling.
I agree. I thought it was a waste of an opportunity on Power when they're just like, oh, Carino fired Stanley after that tag match.
Yeah.
Couldn't we have built this into something?
Yeah, they could have just done a backstage thing of, hey, where were you? I don't need you to help me, blah, blah, blah. And just maybe a 30-second to a minute promo, it's done. But also looking at some of the other talent on the roster, Max and the women's TV title, there's no match yet, as well as whoever may be the new men's TV champ. And that's going to be Zicky versus Mims. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the next couple of weeks or they're going to wait till the pay-per-view. We'll see. Throwbilly doesn't have someone going against him. No opponent. Adonis could possibly go to actually build up Throwbilly. Pollo, we're not sure what's going to happen. Have to wait and see. Daisy Kill and Talos. The U.S. tag titles. We saw AJ talking about him and his old partner, maybe his new partner, his little brother, Casey. Maybe they join up. Or Kratos and Odinson. Or, Kerry and Alex. They're not doing anything. You have a lot of tag teams that can jump into the U.S. battle for the belts. The Fixers, who knows? If you need them, use them. Also, Jedias, part of Father Mitchell's group. He's not involved. Clearwater's nowhere to be found. Zion, Jax Dane, Bulletproof Troop. Who knows? Does Tim Storm even show back up? Or is Danny Deals doing play-by-play? There's a lot of questions. I just want this to be a good pay-per-view. It doesn't have to knock it out of the park. Further the storylines. You have all new champions. Just make it make sense. And don't make me feel stupid for watching it. And that's about all I have to say.
Sorry, I was muted. It's like every Teams or Zoom meeting I'm in these days. Tim, you're muted. Oh, sorry. So look, you go to most, if not all, NWA pay-per-views that you can get to.
Mm-hmm.
Samhain. Sawin is I mean, let's face it, right now it's not built up. We don't know a lot about it, so it's a little weaker than it might end up being right now. But if you didn't go to everything, if an event like this were like, I don't know if that's drivable really for me unless it's really great. Like what's going to make it for you and everybody in the chat? What has to happen for Sawin for the setup to make it enticing? Like, I'll let you answer that, but one of the problems for me is the non-build and also just not knowing what the violence is here beyond professional wrestling. And the other part is we just had a pay-per-view where 8 of the 9 titles changed hands. And that says to me, well, you're not going to see any more than one on this pay-per-view, if that.
Yeah.
Like the NWA's had pay-per-views. They don't, like they have had pay-per-views in the past where no titles have changed hands. And that's fine. That's actually refreshingly good sometimes. But it just says to me, well, I'm not going to see any major upsets or anything. And if you're not going to tell me who's fighting and you're not going to tell me what the stipulations of your most violent pay-per-view ever is, I don't really have any interest in. It's drivable for me. It's 5 hours away. I can go to that. It's no problem. But I don't really want to go right now. And
yeah,
I don't like. What do you think they ought to be doing differently?
Well, I think what the NWA, unless you're following the NWA, there are no big names. There's nothing to draw you in. Matt Cardona is the biggest name. You may not like him, but he has the most. He has the most behind him. That people know him from the WWE. He's made his name out on the indies. NWA, the problem is the taping schedule. They're having to run things for 2 months at a time to do a buildup. There's a lot of things that can change in 2 months.
Right.
They need to knock it down to 4 to 6 weeks at most and do some tapings in between. It doesn't always have to be a pay-per-view. They could just do tapings after the pay-per-view or in between to further storylines. And if they're not getting a response, change their course of where they're going.
Right.
But there's just a lot of untold stories that I want to know what's happening with Pollo. What's happening with the Southern Six? Are they going to are Kerry and Alex going to go after tag belts? What's happening? They're not telling enough storyline. I don't want them to hurry up and shove everything down our throats, but I want storylines outside of power episodes. Use social media to tell stories.
Right.
That's what Alonzo was doing. He had a misfire with this latest one, in my opinion. But you're not going to run 100% on everything. But he's furthering a storyline. Do what you have to do to make things make sense. It's these things. I mean, just make it make sense.
So give us the storylines, and like you were saying with Cardona, good known wrestlers like Shrek said. Like bring us some names and some stories around those names. I feel like, and I'm sure you guys both feel the same way, like the Southern Six, without doing anything other than just going to Australia and calling themselves the Southern Six and never explaining what that means, were the hottest things into the NWA fam there was. And now it's just no direction, no story, nothing. So I don't know. I think you're bang on with that stuff. Anyway, guys, I guess that'll do it for us. Thank you for that, Dave, by the way.
No problem. Thanks.
It's always a treat. Let's get out of here. Let's talk about where they can find you on the social media. Jeremy?
You can find me over on Twitter at HJWOTS and on Threads at Championship Wrestling Jeremy. I got two or three more followers in the last week, so I'm starting to get a little traction over there, even though I'm never on that app really. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Okay, how about you, Scoob?
They can find me at Dave Scooby on Twitter and Instagram, or the X, and over on TikTok at Dave Scooby, followed by the number 1.
We'll do some as I was saying. I don't know if you were here for the time, Jeremy. We've got to get together with the Alliance guys and do some bold predictions for this pay-per-view as we get closer. See who does it. There's a thing that Vegas does. Steve and Larson do it over in Going in Raw, actually, where if there are 5 matches on your pay-per-view, you get confidence points. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 points for each match, and you can't use that same number for more than one match. So if you are confident that EC3 is going to defeat Tom, like there's no way he doesn't, you can put that 5 points. If you don't know how it's going to go for another match, you give it 1 point. And then you add up those confidence points at the end and you see who wins the pony, so to speak. So maybe we'll do something like that. And maybe we'll do something with the chat and give a prize away. I got a good prize, actually. Somebody just gave me this. Look at this. Gave it to me at work. Departing employee. Look at that. Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen DVD. Woo! The history of the Horsemen. How do we give that away? Yeah. Yeah. I don't even think I own a DVD player. Oh, I got a PS4. But we'll give that away. That's an awesome thing from my friend Ray. So we'll do that soon. I am at the Alliance Gold on all of the. How did I not have the banner up anymore? On all of the social medias, but most importantly, Alliance Wrestling is at the Alliance blog. That's Jay. That is at all of the social media platforms that exist, including some that don't even exist yet. They're already there. He's already out there with content.
Jay is like Baby D when it comes to social media. He's got those ones that are incubating. I think they call it in Silicon Valley, where they're in the incubator and they're the beta stages. Yeah, he's on all that shit.
Can I just put over your T-shirt before we go? It's a Wild Cards T-shirt.
Wild Cards!
That is amazing. And alliance-wrestling.com, of course, your number one source for news and information around the National Wrestling Alliance. Matthew Underwood, Horseman and IP just being wasted in AEW. I don't watch AEW. Are they touching on the Horseman beyond? I mean, Arden's not even there anymore, is he? I don't know. You'll know. I don't know. I don't watch the product. I just
does AEW own the rights to
No, Arn Anderson owns the rights to the name Four Horsemen.
That's right.
Because he was able to show the segment where he said, you know, these 4 guys, you're looking at the 4 horsemen of professional wrestling off the cuff. That's his now.
Yep. That's right.
But I guess Brock is maybe still over there. I don't know. But anyway, there we are. That's it, guys. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you at the matches.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.